I can. Okay. I'm glad we're all very open-minded here.
Of course. That's what we've been talking about. All are welcome, you never know. Hi, Chris and Carrie, Mary Davis.
Hi.
Hey. Hi. Oh, Nicoletta.
Hi,
Here. Hi.
Juanita.
Hi, Juanita. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm actually on my phone for a little bit and then I'll be on
Same
the
here.
other.
Okay. Well, you won't get to hear my intro of you, but I think you know who you are.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, we're so pleased.
And
Now,
here's Ken. Ken is the one that told me about this meeting.
oh, okay. Fantastic. Great. Great. So we were just talking about chosen family and how it was that Emil is a brother of mine and Dano is a brother of mine. And soon Juanita will be a sister since she also shares Emil as a brother. So nice, nice, nice. Hi, Amy Leventhal and Leah. Is it Leah or Leah? Hey,
It's Leia.
Leah. Hi, welcome to you. And Ken, hey. I wasn't sure if you were the CDC person that told Edgar about today's
Yes,
meeting.
yes, that was me.
It was you.
Uh-huh.
I had that feeling, and now there you are right next to each other on my screen. It's fantastic.
And Ken and I are true brothers.
Yeah,
Are you? Lovely.
yeah, we trained at CDC together many years ago in the Epidemic Intelligence Service
Oh,
back
great.
back in the early 90s. Yeah,
That's the kind of intelligence service we need, isn't it?
that's right.
Ah, there's David Ray, fresh from a retreat. We're going to give it a couple more minutes because I can see people are coming in a little slow.
Great.
Where's David? There you are. Hi, Tracy and Ginny. If you can hear me, welcome, welcome.
Hello.
Hi. Hi.
Hi there.
So Ken, you and I still haven't had that meal. Let's do it.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Hmm. Hi, Ginny. Are you new to us?
No, I'm on the edges.
Okay, great.
No, I don't make every meeting. I love these meetings. I just don't make them. And so I'm here. They say
Great.
80% is showing up.
We're
So
we're thrilled you're here. We're really thrilled.
you're
So
kind.
you are on both are you on Signal? Don't
I'm
mean
on Signal. Yep.
you are, and you're in Signal and also email,
Yes.
and now you're here. It's fantastic. Hi, Mary Odom. How are
Hey,
you?
fine.
Sandy Fur. Hey.
Hello, hello.
Hello. And Cindy. Ah, Cindy L. One of our compas. Hey, Cindy. All right, friends. So I think we will begin. And I just wanted to, and Dano, if you will just keep letting people come in, thank you so much. Um, so it is so great to see you all. It feels like forever since many of us were together at Refuge Coffee. That was really fun, wasn't it? And I know that we will be having an in-person meeting sometimes when it gets warmer. It's been pretty chilly to be outside. But anyway, I welcome you. I'm really glad that you are here. Martha and I are going to try to return to our first Sunday of the month in the new year, and the first meeting that will focus on allies, organizations, issues will be February 1st. And the next meeting after that, which will focus on the mutual aid section of IRW, will be March 1st. So we're not meeting in January, okay? But we will try to return to a first Sunday of the month from 5 to 6:15. And y'all know you will receive notices about that, right? Okay. And I am delighted to see so many new faces. I wanted to be sure people know that Martha Reese is the co-lead of Immigrant Refugee Workgroup. So Martha, you can say hey,
Hi, everybody.
right? And Dano is going to be manning the chat. And so if you are new and you're not receiving our emails or signal sites, please put your name and information in the chat. That would be email, obviously, for email notices, and a phone number if you're on Signal, so we can add you to any subgroups that you wish. But I want now to move into our program. And I am really, really delighted. It's a great pleasure and privilege, actually, to welcome our guest speakers today, Juanita Cabrera Lopez and Dr. Emil Keme. Juanita is Maya Mom, a large, distinct indigenous group descended from the ancient Maya, primarily living in the highlands of Guatemala and southern Mexico. She is a survivor of the internal armed conflict and genocide in her home country and a former political refugee. Together with Mayan elders, leaders, and organizations, her work focuses on the rights of indigenous self-determination and collective rights to lands, territories, natural resources, and the environment. She holds a Master's of Advanced International Studies from Johns Hopkins, a Master's in Public Policy, and she is the Executive Director of the International Mayan League, about which she will speak today. Our second speaker is Emil, Dr. Emil Keme, and he is Kaiche, and forgive me, you will pronounce it better soon, I know you will, Maya. This is another indigenous group in Guatemala, descended from the Maya people. He too fled the armed conflict and genocide in his homeland and came to the USA as a child. In addition to serving as a consultant for the Mayan League, he is a noted transnational scholar and activist, a member of the Maya Anti-Colonial Collective, and a professor of English literature at Emory University. He has academic experience and expertise on indigenous peoples' history and culture, particularly in Mesoamerica, and is the author of several related books. And finally, he is the 2020 recipient of Cuba's prestigious Literary Criticism Prize for his book, Our Maya Word, Politics of Resistance in Guatemala. So I know that I have shared with you all the website for the Mayan League's, the International Maya League, and they do a wide variety of things, from ecological to cosmovision of the Maya people, preserving, transmitting, teaching, worldviews, culture, history, and the contributions of their ancestors and the values of their contributions to both traditional knowledge and as stewards of the earth. They also do work, immigrant refugee work related to what we're doing. They have many programs, one of which includes human rights and advocacy for indigenous peoples in Mexico and Central America, as well as work with supporting indigenous peoples who have been displaced and are now living in the USA. So this work will be central to their presentation, and I think I've said enough, and I would like to now welcome them both again. Encourage you to put your view on speaker. And who will speak first? I think Emil or Juanita? Thank you both.
Sibalak Matiosh, Uchalal. Utsipetiki Wanahel, Lenubiare Emil Keme, Ina Kichumaya Winak, Kinkikotikinko Wuk. So good afternoon, everyone. What you just heard is the Kicha Maya language, and I just basically said, I'm really happy to be here with all of you, and thank you for the opportunity to share our work. Juanita, I don't know if you want to say something before I move to the video. Are you there? Oh, yeah.
Juanita, good afternoon. My name is Juanita. It is a pleasure to be with you, calling in from Piscataway Nation Territory or Maryland. And I will be online in a second, so I will give it back to Profe Emil and join you on camera in just a couple of minutes.
Okay, wonderful. So I guess to better contextualize our discussion today, I think we're going to start with showing you a short video. It's only 7 minutes long. That references the way, the Trump administration, the Trump administration's first term and the zero tolerance policy and its impact on indigenous migrants. So I'm going to start with that video, and then Juanita and I are going to begin a conversation with you all. So give me 1 second. Can you all see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm going to start.
You hear that immigrant children are dying at the border. You hear that Central Americans are dying at the border, but you don't hear that these are indigenous children dying at the border.
At the U.S. southern border, people from Guatemala make up the largest portion of unaccompanied minors and family units apprehended. At least 6 known children have died in U.S. immigration custody. 5 of those children are indigenous Mayas from Guatemala. And if we include adults, 6 Guatemalan Mayas total have died at the U.S. border. The news reports them as Guatemalans, but their specific Maya nations get buried in the coverage. Mam, Kekchi, Chu, Chorti, Achi. We spoke to Maya immigrants in the U.S. about the deaths of these young people at the border.
In Komolveto, Tenam, Ishil.
At Shitahawik Shol Kunakil Mam. Intimpe,
I'm from the Maya Mam Nation.
Some of them asked us to protect their identity for fear of persecution of their families in Guatemala.
Las muertes de estos niños en las fronteras, lo único que nos está haciendo es visibilizando.
In Guatemala, official statistics say the indigenous population is around 40%, but some think it could be as high as 60%. Despite being a large portion of the population, indigenous peoples in Guatemala face high levels of inequality, land disputes, and displacement.
Nosotros somos obligados a ir, a partir y a dejar lo que es nuestro, nuestra identidad, nuestro idioma. Somos una nación resistente aún.
In May 2018, 20-year-old Claudia Patricia Gomez was shot in the head by Border Patrol agents.
As I started hearing the news, I realized that she was from San Juan Ostuncalco, which is the village right next to where I was born, and that she was actually from my nation.
Then, reports of Maya children dying in U.S. custody started rolling in.
A little girl, Jacqueline, had died in custody. And then just 2 weeks later, we heard the news again, and Felipe died on Christmas Eve. Later, we had Juan. And then we heard that a toddler had died, 2.5 years old. His name was Wilmer. And not even 2 weeks later, another boy, a 16-year-old, his name was Carlos.
They died of things like bacterial infections, influenza, and pneumonia following ICE custody.
Son niños inocentes que vienen a ofrecer su vida como un sacrificio demostrando y gritando el sufrimiento que pasa en nuestra comunidad.
One of the main challenges that indigenous migrants and refugees face at the border is the language barrier, both with English and Spanish. Aside from Spanish, there are 22 officially recognized indigenous languages in Guatemala.
Muchas veces no hablamos el idioma español y nos encontramos con esa barrera al entrar a este país. Desconocemos lo que es el idioma inglés.
We've asked for interpreters in their languages because you cannot have access to justice if you can't express yourself. And if they can't express themselves in their language, then they can't tell the complete story of what happened.
Mam, Quiche, and Canjobal, Maya languages indigenous to Guatemala, are in the top 25 most common languages spoken in U.S. immigration court today. Despite this, there's often a shortage of interpreters of indigenous languages, and the language barrier can be deadly. Detained immigrants who speak an indigenous language are less likely to receive medical care. 7-year-old Jacqueline Cal's father, Neri Gilberto Calcus, signed a form stating that she was in good health. The form was in English. Cal's first language was Maya Quechua. Jacqueline Cal died of a bacterial infection. Indigenous Guatemalans also face high malnutrition rates. Malnutrition in Guatemala is 47%, with up to 70% in some indigenous areas. The Alta Verapaz province, where Jacqueline Cal was from, has a 59% chronic malnutrition rate among children.
Todas las tierras de mis ancestros han sido expropiadas por los grandes empresarios, terratenientes que han ocupado las sagradas tierras.
Palm oil plantations have been encroaching on indigenous land in rural Guatemala.
So you look at the case, for instance, of Jacqueline Cal. The area that she came from is today heavily controlled by transnational corporations, by palm oil plantations.
In 2018, 18 land defenders were murdered in Guatemala.
Muchos de nuestros hermanos están también siendo perseguidos dentro del territorio por las grandes empresas extractivas que están llegando como una forma de monopolizar todos los recursos existentes.
People from Guatemala started coming to the U.S. in big numbers fleeing war.
En 1980 explotó más la guerra en mi país.
There was a mass exodus because of genocide that was occurring in our lands and territories.
Guatemala experienced a 36-year civil war between 1960 and 1996.
No es porque nosotros quisimos venir a este país, sino que estamos buscando vida porque somos refugiados, no somos inmigrantes, porque nunca pensé salir de mi madre tierra.
The United States under the Reagan administration poured hundreds of millions of dollars into the Guatemalan military. The Guatemalan military was responsible for 93% of the human rights abuses during the war.
More than 200,000 of our people were killed or disappeared, and over 1.5 million were forcibly displaced. Most of us, were Maya people.
In present-day Guatemala, indigenous people are leading the charge to prosecute war criminals from that era. Efraín Ríos Montt, dictator of Guatemala from 1982 to 1983, was convicted of genocide and crimes against humanity in 2013. Ríos Montt was charged for the massacre of 1,771 Maya Ixil people. However, his conviction was later overturned and he died at age 91. The oppression of Maya peoples in Guatemala didn't start with the Civil War.
El genocidio empezó desde la llegada de los españoles.
Tenemos 500 años de resistir en nuestro territorio por todas las injusticias. Los pueblos mayas somos pueblos que hemos existido y que hemos resistido ante diferentes tipos de invasiones.
Es una larga noche que hemos tenido, es un largo caminar que tenemos de ser exiliados en nuestra propia tierra, de ser obligados a no hablar nuestro idioma, de ser obligados a no usar nuestro traje que nos identifica.
There's at least 1.3 million people of Guatemalan origin in the United States. However, it's unclear how many of those people are indigenous.
We're inaccurately mislabeled as Latino or Hispanic or Latinx, but it's also caused a process of erasing our existence, erasing our identity.
Though made invisible, Mayas are part of the fabric of U.S. immigrant communities.
Es un reto empezar de nuevo. Los mayas sí existimos aquí.
What's happening to Mayas at the U.S. southern border is backed by centuries of oppression.
The root drivers of forced migration for many of us has been because of our indigenous identity, because of the large-scale persecution we have lived.
The International Mayan League has made demands of the U.S. government. Those include thorough and transparent investigations into the deaths on the border and a dialogue with indigenous leaders on developing humane immigration policies.
Los gobiernos no son nuestros gobiernos, son gobiernos de los ricos, de grandes empresarios, terratenientes, pero no hemos tenido nosotros una representación dentro de los gobiernos, sea aquí en Estados Unidos, sea en otro país, no hemos tenido un reconocimiento.
Hey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you like
Okay, so I thought this would be a good way for us to start the conversation. And I think we can begin with Juanita, who can share a little bit about the history of the Mayan League. And then I can speak about my own involvement with the organization, which started in 2018. But Juanita, we can start with you.
Thank you, and thank you again for your patience as I was transitioning from phone to computer, and so lovely to see so many of you, and really just wanted to also express my profound gratitude to all of you for the incredibly important work and solidarity and activism and organizing that you are doing for so many communities, so many families right now. And really, I think the conversation tonight is about really joining those activities that each of us is doing in our respective areas. We're all collectively organizing in these particular moments. But I do want to thank you for recognizing that there is a particular nuance in the conversation and understanding around Indigenous peoples' forced displacement and the particular rights that Indigenous peoples that we hold. And that should be part of the conversation in the response that you all are also leading in your rapid response work and also in the larger long-term advocacy. As was mentioned, the International Mayan League was created during 1991 in response to the large-scale displacement that many of our people were forced to make in what we call the third wave of forced displacement. And during this wave, 1.5 million people were forcibly expelled from our homelands, and many of us ended up in the United States. And so part of the work of the International Mayan League in that time period was to create a space to unite our people grounded in our culture and our identity and our languages, and to reaffirm our existence even as displaced people wherever we were at. And to also make sure that our people understood that there were support systems for us in that particular moment. And I think so many of the principles that our founding members, so my parents were actually part of the founding members of the Mayan League. Nana Teresa that you saw in the video is actually my mom and one of the founders of the Mayan League. And one of the things that they felt was so important then and is very relevant now is that one, when we respond to the particular needs and rights of Indigenous peoples, we must also understand the waves, the historical ways in which we have been forced to migrate. And that has been around conflicts around lands and territories, the natural goods of Mother Earth, all across the Americas, not just Guatemala. So if you look at this shared history with North Native peoples, it's the same thing. And so now as we're seeing, again, ongoing human rights violations, we see that many of those who are being impacted are Indigenous peoples. But as we talked about in the video, because we are not being identified as Indigenous, but rather as Guatemalan or Hispanic or Latino, the indigeneity of our community is being erased. And this also adds an additional layer of complexities in how we respond, especially in rapid response, for instance, because we're not responding to the language rights of our community. Maybe we don't know how to do a family preparedness plan in our language, or know your rights in our languages, because most of the material is in Spanish and English or in other languages. And so really the Mayan League was created to respond to the needs and rights in the 1990s. But now today we are still working with the children and the grandchildren of many of our communities who were forcibly displaced because of large-scale massacres and just really violent situations that occurred across Guatemala. And then one of the communities that we're seeing as some of the newest large groups that are being displaced are the Maya Kekchi people, who are in Petén, Coban, Izabal. And one of the young little girls that was a victim during the first Trump administration that you saw in the video was Jacqueline Calmaquin, who was Maya Kekchi, and she died of medical neglect because her family was never provided an interpreter in their language. But those are some of the latest waves of forced displacement related to palm oil plantation, as well as mining concessions and large conflicts around lands and territories. So as we get into a little bit more of the discussion around what you all are experiencing in your area, we can also go a little bit deeper into perhaps who's coming in, what's being some of the root drivers of why, especially children and minors are some of the groups that you're probably working with, and also some of the historical context on that. So I'll leave it there and I'll pass it to Profe Emil.
Thank you so much, Juanita. So my involvement with the league started in 2018, as I mentioned, and at that time, I remember seeing on social media this powerful statement that the league put out denouncing the death of Maya children at the border. And my immediate reaction was to contact the league and just offer help, or just to offer my expertise as a way to start working with them. And Juanita and I had a long conversation where she shared the history of the International Mayan League. And then we also started discussing a lot of the parallels that we both share in terms of our forced displacement from our homelands. And so that connection became significant. And the work that I began to do with the league was in terms of reviewing documents, writing documents, putting together statements, creating ideas for workshops to educate our community, especially on issues of leadership, on indigenous rights, also challenging these categories of, all of these mislabelings that have been happening in immigration, with immigration discourse in the United States. Because as she was saying, one of the things that we have to keep in mind whenever we talk about Maya peoples is that, we're talking about 31 distinct indigenous nations. And usually, when I self-identify myself, I self-identify as Quiche Maya first. And people get surprised at me when I say I'm not Latino or I'm not even Guatemalan, because my history predates those categories. Even the name Guatemala is a colonial name. And all of this to underscore that our relationship with nation states today, it's a colonial relation in the sense that, we're escaping countries like Guatemala or Mexico or Honduras because these governments have been so oppressive to us. And they continue to promote the dispossession of our homelands. The way that the Guatemalan government views indigenous peoples even today is that we are invaders in our own lands, or that we are a problem, right? We are a problem because we speak different languages, because we phenotypically look different than everybody else, or we dress differently. And And so, but above all, we're a problem because we live in territories that are desired by, settlers. And so that's those type of experiences and like being in higher education have allowed me to learn more about our history and that knowledge has helped me and helped us at the Mayan League to educate our own community, because a lot of the generations of Maya kids that are growing up in the United States are hungry for this knowledge. And it's they lack mentors, and so sometimes they come to us asking us all of these questions about being Maya, and so what we try to do is create workshops in order to educate them. But the most significant work that the League does today is offer interpretation services to schools,
What are you doing?
hospitals,
I'm on I'm on my
lawyers.
Zoom that I wanted to be identified. Oh, this isn't for me.
And
oh. Lynn Beach, could you turn off your audio? There we go.
So yeah, and the most important work I think that the League is leading right now has to do with interpretation services in Mayan languages. And in the last few years, the League has also prepared workshops to prepare interpreters in indigenous languages to provide services for our community. And yeah, so I think I can leave it at that. Juanita, I don't know if you want to add anything else about the workshops, especially on interpretation.
Yes, thank you. So I see that there's some questions coming in, and so I know we'll have Q&A in a little bit, but I did want to highlight that I think one of the biggest barriers that we are seeing to due process rights, even though I know due process is pretty much out the window right now for anybody, but it becomes complicated. It becomes further complicated with language barriers, especially for Indigenous peoples. As Profe Emil was saying, there are at least in Guatemala, at least 22 distinct Maya nations, in addition to Xinca, Garifuna peoples. And so that means that there are 22 distinct Maya languages, Xinca and Garifuna. And then as an example, I'm Maya Mam, and Emil is Maya Quiche. And in my nation, Maya Mam, we have many variants of Mam. So even if a person is Mam, they may not necessarily be compatible in understanding 100% somebody else who is Mam. And what we have found is that then if somebody's able to get an interpreter, they may not necessarily get the correct interpreter because it's not the correct variant of Mam in that language. And so, especially in rapid response scenarios, if we're not documenting where a person is coming from and then the department that they come from, if we need to provide them an interpreter, we may not give them the correct interpreter for their language. Or sometimes people might mix up Quiche and Quechua because they sound similar, but they're completely different languages. And so what that means for rapid response support is that when you are doing the intake to support a family after detention, or when you're out there doing the ICE verification watch, we may be missing key pieces of information to support the family in the first 24 hours of response. So one of the things that we have been trying to do in our work has been to, one, educate the rapid response groups of the diversity and the nuances of who's in their community. So for instance, in Atlanta, I'm still trying to get familiar with what Maya communities are present there. But in Maryland, Virginia, and DC, it's a huge Maya Mam from Quetzaltenango. And Profe, maybe you could pull up the map that I gave you in PDF to show Maya communities across the country. And so that's one clear way in which we can inform ourselves to understand the diversity of who's in our communities. Let me keep going. So really, that's one way. Then the other way is that, thank you, right there. And then if you could enlarge it just a bit, I'd be appreciative. So this map, we did not create this map, but this map comes from MINEX, which is from the Guatemalan government, and based on the people who are coming to the consulates to ask for appointments. And so if you can just make it a little bit bigger, you can see through this map, and you can see down in Georgia that the diversity in Georgia, I think if you go and you see the arrows of the different communities in Georgia. Atlanta, okay, some of them are Achi, I think Cancobal, Mum, and you all can have a copy of this presentation. It was for another presentation that I did. But basically what is important is to understand who all is in your community and to understand. So in Atlanta, you have Achi, Chu, Quiche, Cachiquel, and Cancobal people based on information coming from the consulate. And so what that means is that then perhaps you all in your rapid response groups, because I saw how you're all organized, would then make sure that maybe this is being captured in intake forms to be able to respond to the families. In our end, what we're doing is we're working with the interpreters who are responding to the needs in our communities. So we're training mostly young professionals, meaning like maybe up to 35 years old. That's just the age range. There's no age restriction to be in our training course. But really they need to speak their language, and then at least Spanish and maybe English. Some are trilingual or multilingual, but at least bilingual. And we make sure that they are trained in the ethics of being a professional interpreter, the confidentiality, etc. And then we support them also in the trauma piece. So much of their work is very traumatic, as we all know, in rapid response and working with impacted families. And it's re-triggering for our community as well, who has lived through many levels of trauma, but are doing this daily work to support our community. So we do have an intake form that we can follow up with later, where if you need interpreters, we can do our best to try to connect you with interpreters. But really, it's such a critical piece to help families understand their rights in their languages, especially in moments where there's a lot of trauma and emotional impact. Our families go back to their original language to be able to process everything. And so that usually means their language. And then just one last piece in our training program is that we have found that if the interpreters that we train are not fully knowledgeable in their own identity and history and cosmovision, and we help to instill pride in who we are, when they face racism and discrimination in the courts or with lawyers because they too are Indigenous, if they don't have all of that inner strength, then it can also derail the whole interpretation because they themselves are facing racism as well. And so part of what we try to do is try to give them all of their skill sets so that when they do face racism as an interpreter, they can, have the tools in place to continue providing interpretation for the family. And then we provide debriefing and support after something like that may occur. So we're very grateful to them for their skills and their expertise defending so many of our communities in this moment, because again, there is no due process, but at least we can try to help bridge a gap in terms of some of the needs that we're seeing.
Yeah, I see one of the questions has to do with our recent trip to Guatemala, Juanita. So yeah, last month during the first week in November, we were invited to present some of our work at the Tribunal against racism in Guatemala. So about 10 Maya organizations came together to denounce the Guatemalan government and their lack of response to a lot of racism against Maya peoples in Guatemala. And so there were a lot of participants that came by to share their stories. And there were some Guatemalan governmental representatives at this meeting where they heard testimonies and stories and research about how racism has impacted Maya peoples, and the work that we share had to do with indigenous migrations and the lack of response by the United States to what Juanita is saying, like interpretation services. But these are issues that also happen in Guatemala, because as soon as people are deported back to Guatemala, the Guatemalan government does not basically offer anything in order to help people reinstate their lives in the country. So that was the main purpose of our visit there. Let's see. Should we open it up for questions, for Q&A, Tara? Or
that would be fine. I mean, don't stop talking about that trip, because I think it was extremely meaningful for both of you, but important as a historical moment.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and Juanita and I kind of knew or kind of anticipated what would happen, but our main interest was to connect our work with the other Maya organizations that are also working for human rights in Guatemala. So and in that sense, our trip was very successful, because we got to connect with a lot of warriors, Mario warriors. It was very significant, important for us, and especially to familiarize people with the work of the League in the United States as a way, because immediately they were asking for information. They wanted to put their relatives in the United States in touch with us. So it was a really nice exchange. Yeah.
Wonderful. So we do have some questions, and I'd love to have you both take a look at those and choose which ones you'd like to address. But I know one of the first things that was asked was how we here in Atlanta might be able to be of help, support to your organization. Obviously, having Emil here, we could certainly work directly with you, because Juanita, I think that mostly you are located in the DC area. Is that correct? Is that the main place for the International Maya League?
So our organization is incorporated in DC, but our team is pretty much everywhere. We have team members in Ohio, in North Carolina, and South Carolina, and Texas, Virginia, and Maryland. And then our board members are both in the US and in Guatemala. And then, of course, we have Profe Emil, who's down in Atlanta. So, and then our interpreter network is national. So really, especially our interpreter network, we do most of our interpretation via virtual platforms, so Zoom, WebEx. So that's not a problem. We're telephonic. And really our work is we have regional work that we're doing with our own rapid response groups here in the region. But for instance, there was a raid with our sister organization, Comunidad Sol, in August in Ohio. So we help support them with communication work, elevating what happened, getting a video out, getting some human rights partners together to try to support them at that moment. We've been working closely with some of our the interpreters in our network in Houston, because there's also been a huge attack to the Maya Kikuchi community in Houston. And so part of it is elevating what's happening, a communication strategy, and getting information out. So really, in terms of just some of the questions that came in, we can support with interpretation requests. They can come in from anywhere in the United States. And if we can't help you, we refer out to some of our partner organizations. So there isn't a centralized interpreter agency. It's very much grassroots from different community organizations. And so we work together in alliance. So if they also can't find somebody, they might reach out to us and vice versa. So we can follow up with our interpretation request form. And then we do provide trainings. There was a question on the trainings piece, but right now we do have a wait list because we're such a small team. So sometimes if we have a big one, we might open it up to the public, or sometimes we might do very tailored trainings to we like to do larger groups so that more people can take the training at one time. So for instance, like we've done it with a couple large legal clinics, as well as social service providers. And so we are now happy that with Profe Emil, we're trying to get some more work that I think we can explain in a second on some workshops with some of the schools in Atlanta. I see, Mary, that you've had your hand up, so I will stop there.
Mary, you're muted.
Thank you so much for the video and your presentations and sharing all this knowledge with us. And I guess I think this is maybe reflecting some of the questions too in the chat, was in thinking about the kind of work we do, what would be, the best way to, I guess, connect people that we encounter with your services or with some kind of translation. So, we're sometimes meeting with immigrants in courts and or who are going to the ICE immigration office. And, we have refer people to lawyers. And of course, usually, most often they're interested in Spanish speaking lawyers. But I think it would be really good if we had some, I don't know if there's a card or maybe just we could make cards with the information of that. And I see that there's one, Martha had something, an example of an El Refugio. There is a Chu woman who speaks little Spanish, and it would be, they're looking for someone who might be able to help her at El Refugio in terms of, locating her husband, I think. So I guess, trying to figure out how we can connect, the best way to connect with your kinds of services in terms of people we encounter.
I know that, Emil, you have a relationship with Amilcar. And so certainly that's an important piece of this relationship and how to be helpful, right?
Yeah. Yes, because one of the things that I was doing once I moved down here was to connect with different organizations, just to learn about their work and also to share the work of the Mayan League with them. And Milcar was one of them. And when I spoke to him, he was telling me about how indigenous peoples in detention centers in Georgia are like usually the most isolated because they don't speak the language. And even at the Day of the Day event that happened this past month in November, when I saw the list of people that's El Refugio listed, there was a Cachical Maya person. I recognized the last name immediately. And I think we do have cards, right, Juanita, and she can send some to me and I can share some with you as a way to start connecting. And Juanita also shared a link to the page for language interpretation services. So Mary, if you want to share this information with this, or Marta, if you want to share this information, the link with the family, and ask them to get in touch with us to fill it out, and we can look for a Chuch interpreter for the family. We can certainly do that.
Wonderful. I know that Camille has had a couple of really great questions in the chat. So could you unmute yourself, Camille, and ask them directly?
Yes, hi. So I wanted to know, my first question was about some of the services you provide about teaching people um, how to speak the various dialects. I do understand that within each language group, you have several groups within the group, especially the larger the community, the larger the nation. I wondered if you offer the same kinds of courses for the community members to learn sister languages. I was wondering, is there maybe a more common dialect or a dialect that's easier to find interpreters? Um, do you offer services for those community members to learn that sister language? Because I know that was helpful for many nations here when we were being moved, when we were being, trafficked. This was a way for us to survive. This was a way for us to find where we were going. This was a way for us to find refuge, and it strengthened our bonds. And I just wondered, is that a possibility? And would that make it easier to train others to learn this language, and then find interpreters and make it easier for these people to get the help that they need? And then my other question was about our tribal councils, our nations here. I know you're located DC, Maryland, Virginia. I was wondering, like, where, are you close to Piscataway Nation? Are you close to, some of these other nations who could offer assistance? We have the American Indian Movement, for example. I'm wondering, do you also get assistance from us here? And if not, how can our tribal councils, how can our organizations help you?
Yeah, I can answer the first part, and then Juanita, if you wanna talk about the connection with Indian Law, the Indian Law Research Center and NCAI. But yeah, so it's pretty difficult to learn a Maya language, precisely because there is not a lot of material, like like, for example, what you have if somebody wants to learn English or Spanish or German, there are so many materials that you can access, but when it comes to Maya languages, it is very limited. And then the dialectical differences are very challenging sometimes. I don't know if you heard about the case that happened a few years ago, a Maya mom kid in Florida, Virgilio Aguilar Mendez. It was an 18-year-old kid that was working on a farm in Florida, and then after a long day of work, he decided to go out to call his dad, and he forgot to leave his knife in his room, and there was a police car with three officers that stopped him, and they started asking him questions. He couldn't answer them because his primary language was Maya Mam, and he ended up being arrested. But during the arrest, one of the officers had a heart attack, and the other two police officers blamed the death of these other police officers on Virgilio, and they gave him 30 years of prison. And so a few months after his arrest, like the police in Florida, provided the videos of the arrest, and there was an uproar on social media. A lot of people began to push back, noting how unfair the arrest had been, and it made national news. Even Kim Kardashian and Coldplay, the band, got involved, and they used their platforms to bring awareness about this particular case. And fortunately, some lawyers in Florida learned about this case and got involved. And fortunately for Virgilio, like he was let go, and his charges were dropped. But the reason I'm bringing up this case is like the league got contacted about this particular case because they needed an interpreter in Maya Mam. And Juanita's mom, Nana Teresa, ended up going to see him. But like the mom that she spoke was very different from the mom language that Virgilio spoke. So we had to learn more about his community. And eventually we were able to find an interpreter to help in his case. But so, I mean, these are the things, some of the challenges that we sometimes face, because even if, as you're saying, like even the languages are kind of different sometimes, depending on the dialectical differences of the specific language. So we have to find interpreters specific to that particular variant, of the person that needs the services. So like, for example, with the Chuj person that needs an interpreter, we need to find out the community where they are coming from in order to find the specific variant that is going to be useful for this particular case.
What I mean is like, I know what you mean. Like for Creek language, we have dozens and dozens and dozens of Creek. And I'm Kushada. There's more than one way to speak Korsati, our language. So when we were being relocated, when we were being trafficked, when we were being, all of those things were happening to us, we started to use almost like a sign language. We could not speak the same Creek as some Seminole, but we knew that eventually we learned a way to communicate with each other. We had to. And I'm thinking, like, isn't there a way? It may not be sign like what we have here, but is there a way, even though Creek for Seminole in the north of Florida is different than Creek for Seminole in south of Georgia, is there a way for them to learn something together to protect themselves? Is there some way to teach each other their dialect, one learning the other, so that they protect their communities?
Yeah, as far as I know, social media is the only avenue that a lot of people are using just to record like TikTok videos about Know Your Rights training. The league has put together some Know Your Rights training material in diverse Maya languages. But aside from that, it is pretty challenging, especially because, like being in the United States too, we live in different places, and that creates a big challenge, especially because people people work long hours, and the something that they don't want to do as soon as they get home is like try to learn language, or so it is pretty challenging. But no, so far, just to answer your question, like the answer is no, we don't have anything in place at the moment that can provide that, especially because our languages are also very different. I cannot understand anything from a Mayan person or a Yucatec Maya person. So some of the dialectical differences are very, are very, very difficult to grasp.
So Juanita, there was a second question about the kind of connections between North American indigenous peoples. I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Sure. So I did want to just quickly respond to the first question. So one of the ways that we have addressed the diversity of our languages in our course is to not necessarily teach a course, because our course isn't a course for teaching languages, it's to teach interpretation. So you have to already know your language to be in the course. But the way that we teach appreciation of our languages is also by having particular sessions in there to talk about specific words, what those words are across multiple languages. And then also some of our interpreters do speak multiple languages. So they may speak Quiche and Ishir and Mam and Spanish and English because they're just language like brilliance. And so in their type of case, they're doing it as appreciation and understanding of their different languages. But when we talk about the ethics of interpretation, we really work with the interpreters to make sure that they are fully fluent in the language that they're going to interpret in, because it can be detrimental to a case if they use the wrong word by accident. But there are classes to learn languages, and we can put some of those links in the chat. But thank you so much for the question, because there is a lot of cross learning just informally amongst themselves. Like Quiche and Cachiquel have a lot of similarities. So I've heard, I don't know because I don't speak them. But I've heard that from the students in our courses. Regarding the second language, and also really appreciate your question, Camille, because really some of the first peoples that supported the founders of the Mayan League were indigenous peoples when some of the founders were crossing into Arizona, for instance, way back in the 80s. And there's a long history of shared displacement, also loss and theft of our children through boarding schools, through the allotment process. And this isn't something that's only relevant to North America or Turtle Island. And so one of the first group of people who said, we're going to help you in 2018, 2019, when it was mostly Maya children dying at the border, as you saw in the video, were medicine women, were elders of North Native nations, particularly through the National Congress of American Indians, from actually Cherokee Nation, who said, we know what it's like to have displacement and loss of our lands and the horrific impact to our peoples. And what is happening to you all happened to us, and we see you, and we're going to help. Sorry, I still get emotional because they were the first ones. And
yeah,
I think it also recognizes the tremendous leadership of women, of elders, because even in this last year, when we've seen so many of the victims are children, are unaccompanied minors. And again, it has been recently the women from diverse Native nations who have come together and said, these are all of our children. We must all stand together for them. And so Piscataway Nation, for instance, has been a huge ally, literally opened their homelands for a huge Maya diaspora here in the Piscataway Nation territory. But then in a more formal way, NCAI has supported us with a formal resolution in 2019 that recognized Indigenous peoples in forced displacement. We can also follow up with that resolution that we have. But I think right now, Camille, to answer your question, is we do need more support from North Native nations, because we also know that these horrific policies are impacting Native peoples as well, who are, they should not be carrying around their tribal passports to show to ICE agents. I mean, these are the homelands of your peoples. And so I think that there's also a tremendous opportunity to continue building nation-to-nation solidarity that we have seen around the rights of children, the rights of women. And we're forever grateful for that solidarity, because that's what these times call for. We need to work together. And I'll end it there. I see somebody else has a question.
I know someone's gonna go, but I just wanted to say thank you, because it means a lot what you do.
And thank you, Camille. Thank you. Edgar.
Sorry,
there you
couldn't
go.
find the button.
There you go.
Thank you very much, Emil and Juanita, particularly for the film that you first introduced your organization to us, to the forum. It brought back very painful memories of my work at the border. I was the first boots on the ground for CDC when the children were coming across. And of course, many of them Mayan, and their health conditions were deplorable. And it touched home to me because I too was a child immigrant under very different circumstances, and that was um, very important to me to compare their fortune versus mine. And I put some questions in the chat because during that time, I was desperately reaching out for Mayan language materials and Mayan language interpreters. And like you were describing, Juanita, it is very, very difficult. And I, for many years, when I was living in Atlanta, people at CDC knew that I was one of the only handful of Guatemalans. And I would periodically get asked, do you know anyone that speaks Canjobon? Do you know anyone that speaks Quechua? Because we have this outbreak going on here, those different circumstances. And coming back to the materials, I reached out to the Academia de Lenguas Maya, the Mayan Language Academy in Guatemala. Unfortunately, there was not much of a response. But I did find the Mayan Health Coalition, I think it's called, in Guatemala, and they were producing WhatsApp messages in different Mayan languages. And I was so lucky to get my hands on those because I was able to distribute those. I was part of the team that was, as Ken was as well, responding to COVID in Mayan communities. And I'm very proud to have been a catalyst for the first poster in Quechua that CDC produced. So I know that the road ahead to try and first bring the recognition that there are Mayan peoples in the US that are distinct from Mayans from Mexico, to say the least. And that, as Emil was saying, many Mayans don't identify as Guatemaltecos, and Spanish is not their first language. So there has to be a different approach. And so I guess I applaud your initiative of educating people. We should all start there, right? Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think if that's all anybody walks away with, which it won't be all anybody walks away with, is to really complexify and nuance who is coming and why, and the differences that of the push and the experience once folks get here. But you've shared so much more with us than that, and thank you so much. There's so much understanding and support that needs to happen. So we have put in the chat, I asked the best way for people to be in touch with you. Marta, I also wanted you to know that I did copy and paste and sent to Emil your request, so that if they can be of help in that case, I know that they will. But also, you have touched the hearts, minds, bodies of so many people here, all of us really. And I'm just grateful to you. We're so eager to support your work. And the other thing I did was put in the chat financial donations, which is always one of one of the things everyone needs. But you should just know that you have people here in Atlanta who would be supportive in any ways that you thought would be helpful. So we're very grateful to you both, really. Thank you so much. It's been a very heartfelt, meaningful, important presentation to us. And yeah, right.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you for and thank you all for coming on a Sunday and hearing from us. We really appreciate it. Just to let you know, also Juanita is going to be coming to Atlanta in February, and she's going to. I'm working out some with some colleagues at Emory, so she can give a talk on indigenous migration. So as soon as we have information about concrete information about that event, I'll share it with you all in case you're interested in attending
Of course. And you're going to do things with schools, are you not? Which I know that we have people who are beginning to work quite actively with schools in our area. So as soon as we know, I'll start pushing that out so people can put it on your calendars. And then I'm going to have a tea at my house and invite some of the people on the screen so that, you know, you can meet some of these people in persons, which is always a pleasure, isn't it? Yeah. Embodied meeting is a good thing. So thank you to everyone for coming. Really, it's been a very meaningful time together, and I thank you both.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just also wanted to say thank you so much for the invitation and for really your